Nigeria now has a new national anthem. President Bola Tinubu this week signed into law a bill to revert to the old national anthem, which was dropped in 1978. At the National Assembly, Tinubu said the change signals the rebirth of a nation. He asked Nigerians to chart their own path to prosperity. Wednesday, May the 29th, 2024, marked the completion of President Bola Tinubu's 1 year in office. It has been a year characterized by shocks in the economy, surprises, and sometimes wholesale redefining of critical sectors of Nigeria's political economy, wittingly or unwittingly, by an administration that continues to fiddle with critical foundations of state. Tinubu's handling of state matters have been measured in terms of the economy, closely followed by security, or the lack thereof, as well as a perceived lack of political will to pursue wholesale reform of key institutions like INEC and the anti-graft agencies. The national budget stubbornly remains top-heavy on recurrent expenditure and resolute in maintaining a bloated government structure. But the president has also not shied away from taking bold decisions. While President Tinubu and his team of ministers have been sounding off on their achievements over the past 1 year, millions of Nigerians have also seized the moment to celebrate 25 years of unbroken experiment with constitutional democracy. I'm now being joined by Chief Wole Olaoye, a journalist, public relations consultant, syndicated newspaper columnist, and chairman, Diametrics Limited, Abuja. Good to have you on This Day Live, Chief Olaoye.
Thanks for having me today.
Well, Chief Olaoye, I read you last week. You wrote a piece, 1 year, reviewing the Tinubu administration. And this weekend, you've written a piece, Sing Native, Sing, which is your commentary on the the reversion to the old national anthem in your columns in the leadership newspaper. So I'll just go straight to the heart of the matter. Your take on 25 years of democracy, 1 year of Tinubu administration, and then this big event going back to the old national anthem, and you say we natives should sing. I hope I'm not one of those natives, because the word native is pejorative, as you argued in your column.
Well, thank you, Ruben. I would like to start. Let me take it in the sequence in which you have asked. 25 years of Nigeria. I think of Nigeria's democracy from 1999. I think we ought to give ourselves more credit than we have in the past. And I say this advisedly because there seems to be this penchant for self-flagellation. There's nothing wrong with Nigerians. And I think what we can say in favor of our countrymen is that as a populace, our standards are very high. And a good deal of the times, the leaders fall short of our expectation. But our standards are high compared to many other citizens of many other countries all over the world, where they just keep quiet while the leaders ride roughshod on them. In Nigeria, our people are very vigilant, and if they can, they would like to put their leaders in their place, to tell them that the king is dancing naked, and which is something we should say for ourselves. So, 25 years, you can't say we haven't achieved anything in 25 years. This is the longest democratic spell we've had. The first one, within 5-6 years, we ran it aground. This time around, we've done a quarter of a century. I think Nigeria deserves to congratulate itself. And when I say Nigeria, I mean the people. Nigerians are very long-suffering, very resilient, but very persistent. And in 25 years, they've proven that if some of the things that happened here have happened in other places, the situation would be worse than it is in Nigeria. Our people are inventive, and the last 25 years have shown it. We may not yet have achieved the level of transparency we want in elections, but we'll see that even the rich also cry. You remember the last elections in the US, although they went well, you can say, but you could see that the loser up to now has refused to even acknowledge that he lost. So the problems that we have with democracy are not just in Africa or in Nigeria. 25 years, we could have done better, yes, but we have done well, reasonably well, and you can see that the democracy is taking shape. We have been able to identify areas where we are not doing well, like making demigods of governors. And we have realized that in order for us to make progress going forward, there are things we have to do. And that is where I will be very interested in what President Tinubu and his team do in the next 12 months. The last 12 months have been teething problems and discovering, voyages of discovery in various ministries of how asset stripping had been a major feature of some government establishments. But the fact that this administration was able to put a cabinet together faster than the last one is cause for joy. And the fact that if you go through all opinion pieces and what analysts have said, you can actually pick out some ministers who have done well under Tinubu. And maybe some are just passengers, and I hope the president himself will take his list and take his, wherever he has kept his KPI, and check who has performed and who hasn't. So in terms of changing of cabinet or retooling the government, government of President Tinubu in the next 12 months has got to be tweaked in terms of personnel, and only the president can do that.
Well, Chief,
I know he has
a
special advisor.
Chief,
yes.
Chief, if I may come in here, President Tinubu himself has said, look, if any minister does not perform, that minister will be turned adrift. He has, a mechanism in place for assessing the ministers. And in your piece, you also echoed that sentiment, which you have just expressed, that he should rejig his cabinet. But very quickly, who and who do you think the president should retain? Who do you think should go? Because we have seen these ministers for about 8-9 months now. So who and who should go?
Yes. Well, I may not have all the information for all of them, and the president may have some privileged information which I don't have. But if I talk as an analyst, as a man in the street, as a member of the public, if I just talk as an informed commentator, I would say some of the ministers have performed reasonably well. I would say the minister, for example, works and all, the Minister of Works,
that's David
has shown that when you put a professional, yes, when you put a professional in a place where he can put his professional knowledge to use for the nation, you are likely to have progress. Dave Umahi is doing well. He has his problems, and I think verbal diarrhea is one of his problems. And but he can be coached in that area. But in terms of his core area of core competence, Dave Umahi has done well. The politician in Abuja has done well. Wike, I have lived in Abuja for a quarter of a century, and Wike will go down as one of the better ministers that ever came to the FCT. He too, he can be helped in terms of how to navigate the issue of verbal diarrhea and mistaking verbosity for action, for wisdom. Now, if you want to look at information, the Minister of Information, I'm happy to give him more than a pass mark. This is a minister who has focused on his bit of bringing out to the populace and to the world what the government is doing.
That's Mohammed Idris. His name is Mohammed Idris.
Mohammed Idris? Yes, Mohammed Idris. Mohammed Idris has done very well. He has not drawn attention to controversies, and he has not tried to lie his way through difficult problems. How I judge some ministers who are in such testy areas like information is how they manage crisis and how they manage information. I think he has done very well. I'm very proud to say so. If you look at some of the other ministries, in the opaque Ministry of Petroleum, where the president himself is the minister, I don't see him firing himself if the petroleum ministry is not working. But if you look at the Ministry of Petroleum, for example, most of the negatives that come to be ascribed to that ministry are fallouts from the incompetencies of NNPC. And I still wonder why NNPC is a regulator, it's a company, it's everything. And I still wonder why we are carrying that kind of omnibus entity in an era when we are trying to...
No, NNPC is now a limited liability company. It's no longer a government-owned
That is what I'm
corporation.
Saying. Well, what does that mean? What has been the difference? Who is regulating NNPC itself? I think the government still has to sit down and decide exactly. That is why you see foreigners will say our system is too opaque. That's why when people are complaining, when the investors are complaining that they don't want to come to our country because they don't even understand whatever rules are in play. You've got to now look at NNPC, which is the major player. It may call itself a limited liability company. It doesn't mean anything to me. What matters to the public and to anybody with any kind of objectivity is how is the operation of NNPC affecting the nation and how it's affecting the lives of the common man. I'm sorry. I think NNPC is one area where the president has to tweak the NNPC. Now, if you look at ministries like, there are some ministries that you can't rate in 1 year, like mining, for example. But the regulations and the kind of sanity that the minister in charge has been trying to put together in the last 1 year are quite salutary. But I am unable to rate somebody like that because he has only had 8 months. I want to see how those policies play out in the next 12 months. The same for the coordinating minister of health, who I think has brought the stature.
That's Ali Pate. Ali Pate. His name is Ali Pate.
Professor. Yeah, I think Professor Ali Pate has brought some kind of, he has a kind of personality and believability. You know, it's one thing to have a good doctor. It's another thing for him to have the courage that you believe everything that comes from him. I'm hoping that in the next 12 months, we'll be able to really now pinpoint the areas where Ali Pate has, but judging as an outsider and with what I know about the health industry, I think Ali Pate is also trying to reinvent that sector of our national life. I am unable to fully judge crucial ministries like finance and science and technology, because I just don't have it. There's so much happening in that sector that it's so confusing. So I would rather say, and these are areas where I say there will be so many things that the president himself knows that people like us don't know. So he may have his reasons.
Chief Olaoye,
yes, please.
As someone observing the government from this side,
yes, please.
Can you mention just one or two ministers that should be asked to go back home?
To go back home, there are some ministers whose I was seeing during the 1 year when the ministers were giving their stewardship. Was in the last, I'm sure if you do content analysis of the newspapers, some ministers have been active in the last, have been so active and have gotten so many inches of news stories in the newspapers in the last 2 months, which they did not get since they were appointed, which means some are working towards this period that you are talking about, to have been seen to do something. I wish the Minister of Youth could do more. I wish I could point to really outstanding things that they've done. Whereas I can say the Minister of Sports has done well, because I can point to so many things that he has changed in that sector. I cannot say the same for the Minister of Youth. And that is probably because there hasn't been too many earth-shaking things, too many significant achievements that have come to my notice. Then you have, there are some of the ministers that I won't even remember offhand. If you mention a name, maybe I'll give you.
Okay, Minister of Interior, for example. Minister of Interior, for example, who is in charge of immigration, the prisons.
Yeah.
Olubunmi Ojo.
The Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Ojo. I'll put Olubunmi Ojo in the same phylum, in the same category with Umahi. I'll put Olubunmi Ojo in the same category with Wike, with Umahi. Those are the poster boys of the Tinubu administration. Olubunmi Ojo has done very well.
Okay. Chief Olaoye, as we begin to summarize, in your piece last week, you talked about certain issues that the president should focus on as priority issues going forward, maybe where there's been some deficit in terms of attention. If we could just run through that list very quickly before we go to the subject of the national anthem, which you wrote about this weekend.
Very quickly, I will want to draw attention to the fact that the biggest problem we have as a nation right now is cohesion. The nation moving forward as one entity. This uniformity of purpose, this moving together as one country, the last elections have been the most divisive we have had. And it's difficult to still convince some people that the elections are over. If you go on the internet, you will be shocked at the venom, the kind of hatred that we trade among ourselves, either at the ethnic level, and the nationality level, the kinds of names that people give people of other ethnic nationalities and all that. I think the president, being president of Nigeria and not being president of any particular ethnic group, I think President Tinubu is probably one of the best advantaged presidents in terms of national reach and having friends all over the country. I think he's very well positioned to achieve that kind of cohesion if he puts his talents to the service of his office in this area. And I mean, there are some things that the president has just to do, like the issue of Kano, of IPOB. I think the president should put that as one of his assignments to achieve a political solution, so that we can close that chapter and march forward as a people. I can see that I'm sure Kanu himself did not believe what he started will balloon to what it is now. But we do have a president now who has national reach in terms of he has friends all over the country. So he's able to understand the need for national cohesion. And I think in the next 12 months, the president should put that as on his to-do list, that this kind of problem, I must achieve a political solution and, get the young man out of this present bind that is in.
Chief
and let's move together as a nation.
Chief Olaoye, as we begin to summarize, I thought I saw an interview granted by Dr. Dunyo Kupe, in which he in fact went a step further and said, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the Jesus Christ of Nigeria. Do you agree that is the Jesus Christ? And this cohesion that you are talking about, no. Do you think that it will fix the issue of cohesion with this return to the old national anthem, Nigeria we hail thee, where although we are natives, tribes and tongues may differ, all of us will have to defend the motherland?
I'm sure if you ask Tinubu himself, you tell Tinubu himself that it's Jesus Christ of Nigeria, he will be the first to tell you that, God forbid, that it's not Jesus Christ of Nigeria. Nobody can be Jesus Christ of Nigeria. I think it takes a certain level of psychophancy to be able to ascribe that to anybody. I think one of the deliverables that I expect in the next 12 months is the Kano matter, and I think the president can do it. Now, your other question on
national anthem.
I don't think that is, as I've argued, one of our problems. But now that it has been adopted and the president has signed and it has become law, people like us have nothing to fear. I know the 3 stanzas of head. I am still able to sing the 3 stanzas of head. I don't have that problem, but I don't want to impose the sentiments of my generation on the younger generation who probably, if you ask them, would have preferred the one that has just been jettisoned, because that was written by us, the music composed by us, and so if we have to go back to colonial anthem, to be able, we might as well go back to the value of the naira at that time. Even the value of the naira in 1980, the 1 naira was 98 kobo. Let's go back there. What the 98 kobo was $1. So the naira was stronger than the dollar. So the anthem is not our problem, as I've argued, and as I've argued this week. The fact that you go back to that anthem and you carry it with all the baggage. You now have Budo tribe and tongue. Europeans are not called tribesmen, for example. When you say tribe, you are referring to groupings in Africa. Then when you have these words carry more than the meaning that they portray. In the 50s, it was acceptable to say these are tribesmen. In 2024, what was acceptable in the 50s is not acceptable today. And then when people say, "Do tribe and tongue, maybe if in brotherhood we stand," I like the sentiment. Well, we are no longer tribesmen, and we are now going back to that by ourselves. And going back to what we are jettisoning, I am not excited by that. That is putting it very mildly. I'm not excited by it. And as I've disclosed, I have a bias. There are words like that the colonialists have been using for us. And we ourselves have bought. Like if you look at a word like, you see a governor saying, oh, he's settling some problems with regard to his traditional stool in if you are talking of Ife, for example, you don't have a traditional stool in Ife. You have a throne. You don't have a traditional stool in Oyo. You have a throne. You don't have a traditional stool in Onitsha. You have a throne. But we repeat what the colonialists, the derogatory way he used to address us, we now repeat it by ourselves. And we now have it enshrined in an anthem to which we stand at attention. I think if there was wider consultation, I don't think it would have passed the tests.
Okay,
I don't think so.
Chief Olaoye, thank you very much for joining us on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show.